Hello. Thank you for joining me to discuss neurodiversity and RCCD. I was happy to be invited to discuss this topic at the Diversity Summit because I think we need to have a conversation about neurodiversity, and a diversity summit is the perfect setting for that discussion. The field of cognitive typologies is still an emerging field of study. I've been researching neurodiversity off and on for several years now, and it used to be pretty hard to find studies and articles about it, but the research is growing. Still, there's a lot of confusion related to terminology. So, to make sure we're on the same page, I thought I would begin by reviewing some of the vocabulary as it's currently used in the field. Neuro relates to the nervous system and includes the brain. Diverse typically means two parts of a whole, with one part being a collection of varieties. Neurotypical is generally considered to represent the majority cognitive typology, most often attributed to a species typical human or student who exists within that bell curve of what's considered to be normal. Neurodivergent and the emerging terminology neurodistinct refers to a person who identifies with one or more unique cognitive typologies like autism or ADHD. Neurodiversity represents all of the unique ways the human brain processes information, and neuroinclusion promotes the acceptance and inclusion of all the cognitive typologies where individuals feel a sense of belonging without being forced to be like someone else. These are labels used to describe cognitive functions, and although we may wish to avoid labeling people, humans learn by grouping and classifying characteristics and use classifications to understand symptoms and develop strategies to treat challenging conditions that affect the body and or mind. Unfortunately, after creating labels to categorize traits, humans arrange those labels to hierarchically organize individuals within social systems and to scientifically measure differences, conceptualizing normal and abnormal, and establishing preference to certain types of naturally occurring human diversity. Neurodiversity research is important to helping clinicians and educators understand unique cognitive typologies, but every classroom is and always has been enriched by neurodiversity. Recognizing this fact is crucial to creating inclusive learning environments. There are naturally occurring variations among human brains because brains are more unique than fingerprints. Just as racial diversity shouldn't be attributed only to minoritized racial groups with more melanin in their skin, we need to examine our neurodiversity biases because some brains are not neurodiverse. All brains are neurodiverse, only some neurodiverse brains are marginalized because of their unique cognitive typology, and nowhere is this more evident than in higher education. The term neurodiversity emerged in the 1990s and was coined by Judy Singer, an Australian sociologist who identifies as autistic. Singer coined the word neurodiverse to explain how everyone's brain develops in a unique way. Singer meant for the term to describe the diversity of all people, to promote equality and inclusion of neurological minorities. And she meant for it to be an alternative to deficit based language like disorder. But the term evolved, as words do, and became used in the context of autism and other neurological conditions, in part because the autism community embraced the neurodiversity term as a form of self advocacy. But Singer also coined the term neurodivergent to describe an individual like herself who is on the autism spectrum, or more broadly, whose brain processes information in a way that's not typical of the majority. According to Webster's dictionary, the word divergent means to differ from a standard or to move or extend in a different direction from a common point. Since many in the autism community refer to non-autistic people as neurotypical, we can see how they might connect this view of neurodivergence to their way of processing information, especially since their experience navigating this world tends to diverge from the common or species typical humans' experience of moving through the world. To ask which term is appropriate, neurodiverse or neurodivergent, you would have to ask the individual. Some refer to themselves as neurodiverse and others as neurodivergent, and some as autistic, and some identify as a person with autism. However, for this presentation, I'll use the terms neurodivergent and marginalized neurodiversity to refer to the unique cognitive typologies of students whose neurodiversity means that they have to work very hard to adapt to most college learning environments. As I said, the research is expanding, and this year, cognitive scientist Dr. Maureen Dunn published The Neurodiversity Edge. In it, she describes a neurodiversity umbrella that includes all brains. Dr. Dunn places two groups under this umbrella: those described as neurotypical, who are social systems considered to be normal, and neurodivergent individuals like herself with cognitive profiles that historically were considered to not be college material. Interestingly, in a recent study of 1,000 Gen Z individuals between the ages of 18 and 25, the researchers found that nearly half of all Gen Z participants identified as neurodivergent. 22% said they were definitely neurodivergent, and 31% reported that they were somewhat neurodivergent. Another study found that 80% of Gen Z job seekers would prefer to work for a company that supports neurodivergent people. It might help to compare some of the characteristics of neurodivergent thinkers to neurotypical ones. Neurodivergent thinkers tend to process information horizontally, creatively, and laterally. I would even say spectrally, compared to their convergent thinkers who tend to think very vertically, logically, and they're very linear thinkers. Neurodivergent individuals often describe themselves as out of the box thinkers compared to their peers, while convergent thinkers are constricted by the boundaries of systematic, normalized thought processes and standardized ways of thinking. Neurodivergent thinkers think outward rather than inward. For instance, they will often start with a question and think outward to generate ideas, going back and forth laterally, horizontally, to grasp at a solution. Whereas neurotypicals will start with facts and use those facts to generate answers in a linear and vertical order. Our schools are arranged for linear vertical information processing, but not surprisingly, a lot of inventors, artists, and progressive change makers have been neurodivergent thinkers. As I was researching this, I realized that I'm both. I use both types of thinking, and as neurodiverse beings, I'm guessing that many of us do. But marginalized neurodiverse individuals overwhelmingly rely on divergent thought processes that don't fit well into our one size fits all learning environments, and they struggle to adapt to neurotypical ways of thinking and processing. Whereas those of us who use both types of thinking can move more seamlessly from one type to another. Something to consider: If we change the way we look at things, the things we look at can change, right? As you can tell, I use a lot of images in my presentations. And when I looked for images of neurodiverse brains, I found colorful cartoons or heads with word clouds inside. And I wondered, what would an AI image show? So, first, I asked AI to generate an image of a brain. And I got this standard pink, fleshy image. Then, out of curiosity, I asked it to show a neurotypical brain. And again, AI generated the healthy pink color, but here it also threw in a little pastel blue, perhaps reflecting research on the different functional areas of the brain. Then I asked AI to show what a neurodiverse brain looked like, and I got these images. I was struck by how much more interesting they are. They have patterns and multiple colors, and even the cerebellums and the brain stems are varied. These images reflect more unique ways of thinking and processing. And to me, the one on the lower left appears alive with activity, imagination, and creativity. When I changed the criteria to neurodivergent brain, AI showed me this less diversity of pattern, but the light suggests stimulation and neuroelectricity. To me, this indicated an inner energy that isn't present in the neurotypical brain, suggesting energy and power. I don't know the science behind these AI generated images. I'm guessing, though, that AI pulled from magnetic imaging and neurological research from multiple disciplines. For instance, I used Webster's dictionary for my vocabulary slides, so AI may have drawn from Webster's definition of divergent, which is to differ from a standard or extend in a different direction from a common point. But AI may also have referenced math and science in creating these images. In math, divergence is described as having infinite properties, and in physics, divergent is related to energy, expanding outward in rays from a common center. The more I learn about neurodivergent brains, the more I think of infinite possibilities and the curiosity, energy, and creativity of the neurodivergent students that I've come to know. Neural research is revealing an interconnected spectrum of cognitive typologies, and some researchers believe that there's no such thing as a normal brain from which some brains diverge because each brain is unique and thought processes overlap and converge in complex ways. But in acknowledgement of individuals who identify as neurodivergent, we should consider some diagnosed conditions that present challenges to students and instructors in fast moving ableist classrooms. But these challenges also come with strengths. Dyscalculia, dyslexia, ADHD, Tourette syndrome, acquired neurodiversity due to brain injury, mental health challenges, autism spectrum condition, and dyspraxia. We usually think of these disabilities based on how they negatively affect learning in college classrooms, but looking at them with a different lens, we see that individuals with dyscalculia often have strong verbal skills, innovative thinking, and they're really good with hands-on tasks. Those with dyslexia are strong visual thinkers. They can be very creative and work well with 3D mechanical skills and architecture. Individuals who manage ADHD are creative and can be hyper focused in areas of interest, and they apply a lot of energy and passion to those things that they enjoy doing. Managing Tourette syndrome can give individuals sharp observational skills, creativity, and strong cognitive control, which is the ability to be very intentional in their thinking, emotions, and behaviors when needed by a certain task. Individuals managing acquired brain injury can be more adaptable, flexible, empathetic, and resilient. And mental health challenges like anxiety and depression often correlate with deep analytical thinking and artistic expression. And while the autism spectrum has a wide range of variability, many individuals on the spectrum can be really good at concentrating and processing fine details. And many have very strong memories for facts. And individuals who struggle with dyspraxias, movement, and coordination symptoms can be very skilled verbally, empathetic, and highly intuitive. But the challenges are real and can affect the way neurodivergent students process information in the classroom. But the challenges may also be due in part to internal symptoms and external factors, including negative stereotypes and lack of understanding that sends the message that neurodivergent students don't belong or don't deserve to pursue a degree. Academic challenges include difficulty processing information in restricted time constraints and or executive function skills that impact time management, organization, planning, and impulse control. Also, moving through the world feeling different and othered often leads to social isolation, which means these students may lack the practice and experience they need to interact socially, including participating in group work, understanding sarcasm, idioms, and jokes, and this causes them to feel excluded. Some of these challenges are directly related to symptoms, but they're exacerbated by stigma, stereotypes, and lack of understanding. So, until classrooms are more neuro-inclusive, we can't really know how much of their challenges are related to cognitive difference and how much is due to biases in ableist classrooms. Something to consider. Every human condition or way of being exists along a spectrum, including height, weight, physical and cognitive abilities, race, and gender. One of the interesting findings of my dissertation study on disability perceptions of community college stakeholders came from two participants, both instructors. When I asked them to define disability based on their experience and background, I received many different definitions, and a few mentioned limitations, but one said, "We see them as disabled because we can see what they have to do to adapt, but we have to adapt to things all the time, but we see our adaptations as normal." Another participant said, "We see them as limited, but as educators, our limitations are revealed when we struggle to teach them." I think that before we can commit to a neuro-inclusive learning community, we need to think about our narrow definitions of ability and disability. In 1931, James Truslow Adams wrote The Epic of America, and in it he coined the phrase, the American dream. He wrote that the American dream is that dream of a land in which life could be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability. Ableism is written into the fabric of the American dream. And since ability is defined by wealthy or highly educated scientists, scholars, and politicians, it historically excluded individuals whose abilities don't fit those standards from pursuing the American dream. Throughout history, people who manage disabilities have been negatively impacted by social constructs and restrictive definitions of normalcy. And of all the disability types, the most stigmatized in higher education fall under the umbrella of neurodivergence because higher ed has defined ability around neurotypical students. And yet, higher ed is the place where individuals go to develop their abilities into specialized and marketable tools that will allow them to pursue the American dream. So, if higher education's narrow and restrictive pedagogies isolate neurodivergent students, how are they supposed to develop those abilities? Open access in community college has traditionally offered the promise of opportunity to all, regardless of race, income, or high school GPA. But even as higher ed is trying to embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, many educators still resist the notion of neurodiversity. It's past time to provide a pathway for neurodivergent students in the Inland Empire. The Promoting Achievable College Transition Program, or PACT, will form an agreement between several parties. These groups will work together, each accountable to doing their own part to implement the United Nations imperative to improve the lives of individuals who manage disabilities. PACT will support marginalized neurodiverse students transitioning from high school who will be accountable to do their part too. This collaboration will bring together a community to empower and equip neurodivergent individuals with the skills they need to improve their own lives. Currently, 4.5% of 8-year-old children in California are identified with autism. That's about 16,000 children. Thinking about intersectional inequities, Black, Latinx, and Asian Pacific Islander children have considerably higher rates of autism than those of white children. And it should be noted that while the incidence is higher in communities of color, the resources are often much more scarce. 88% of individuals on the autism spectrum score in the average to above average IQ range. Unfortunately, 68% of young adults who manage autism don't even attempt post secondary education, even though 88% have average to above average IQ. And sadly, in those who do attempt college, completion rates for students with ASD are 20% lower than those of their non ASD peers. I'd like to leave you with this thought to consider. The 18th century poet and painter William Blake said that man has closed himself up till he sees all thoughts through narrow chinks in his cavern. But he also said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. Here's to cleansing perceptions that deny individuals the opportunity to discover the infinite possibilities within themselves. Thank you.